Well, I believe that, breaking something down into I'm going to make a full-on commitment, I'm going to do whatever it takes, is impossible for anything longer than 90 days.
Mm.
And it becomes really possible when you say, hey, I'm not asking you to do this the rest of your life.
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. After turnarounds as chief executive, the largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes. I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today. Welcome to Bold Encounters. I'm Mark Cook, and I am so excited today. Very unusual type of guest, one of my clients. I haven't done that a lot. So we're excited to meet today with Michael Goldberg of OmniSource Marketing. How are you, Michael?
Doing good. How are you doing, Mark?
Good, good. I would love to start out in the beginning. One of the reasons I was interested in having you on this show and interviewing you and recording it is because you are one of many, many people out there that has a business situation where their parent owns the business, and then you are either promoted or you buy it or you inherit it or one of the above. And some people do a mediocre job. Frankly, some do a pretty poor job and put that business out of business very quickly. And then there's some like you that do a pretty dang good job at growing this thing. So I wanted to have you as a good example of a very specific instance that happens a lot. And so I'd like you to start there. Tell me about your mom and how she started it and how the business came to be in a few words.
Sure. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I'm excited about this. And yeah, I'm happy to tell some of my story. And if it can benefit others, that's awesome. My mom, Janie, actually, I have to back it up and say I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, and I mean, I'm sure his family was as well. He was an immigrant and started a business, multiple businesses. And my mom kind of has the same DNA running in her blood. And she was really different because as a woman in the 1950s and 60s, being in business was different. And she had a great relationship with my grandfather, and they had a huge, successful vending company back in the 80s in the arcade business. And boy, that was really cool as a kid because I got to go to the office and, test out all the video games. It was a really cool deal. I grew up being a full entrepreneur. I was everything, all the signs were there, like collecting baseball cards. I had a lawn care company at age 13 and all this other stuff. And my mom was always very supportive of my entrepreneurial efforts, including one time when she came home and I think I was like 6. I was having a garage sale, selling stuff from our house in the neighborhood. And she didn't get mad at me. She thought it was awesome. Right. That's the kind of mom I have. I am really blessed, to be have had her as a mentor, as a business partner, my whole life, and in my career in particular. She started this company, as you can imagine, the arcades and video games had a big boom, and then it had a big drop off in the late 80s.
Yes.
And it just so happened it's kind of a long story, but she got into this business from scratch and was doing, and I was involved in it, obviously, involved in the family business, even when I was in high school and in college and such. And after college, I did 3 years as public accounting, and I didn't realize until I got out of that and went to work in the family business, like that was the awareness, like what was I thinking? Like I'm made to be an entrepreneur, not an accountant. So I got that lesson, which was huge. But anyway, so I started working with my mom in like the late 90s. And I was like in my 20s. I like to say in my 20s, working with mom had its challenges. I mean, I was a kid who, had to do everything my way. And, I had to learn all the lessons my way too. And of course, she knows that about me. In my 20s, it was challenging. In my 30s, it was, you know, kind of wasn't as challenging. But in my 40s, like I've really grown to appreciate mom and value her. And so it's been an arc. It's not easy working with your parent.
No, I mean, the
Any
rest of us imagine having the micromanagement, cleaning the toilets and the bathrooms on Saturday morning. And then we contemplate shifting all day long to having parents be in charge. That seems like it'd be a challenge. The brother thing, I get, the sister thing, the siblings, the cousins, that is all difficult relationships to manage when you're in a different context and family. But the parental thing is very unique. So
It really is. It was challenging to like find, view her as a partner, not as like somebody being my parent, and I think I've managed it really well. I think maybe there's been one time where I've threatened to quit in 30 years. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And I wasn't even really serious, like no matter what challenges, we've been through a lot. I always felt like and most of the time when we're arguing deeply about something, we actually agree, which is crazy.
you're in violent agreement.
Violent agreement. And we're like, wait a second, are we arguing over something we agree here? But mom was always good about giving me a lot of leeway. And I always felt like a partner, even though I'm still the 49% shareholder and she's 51, but I've taken the reins as CEO, and that was an important step in the last about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's
Before we get to that, let me ask you something, because I think our audience will have a lot of instruction if they are someone in your mother's spot, but I really am thinking about it from your spot because those are the people I generally get to listen and help. And tell me, there's 10,000 incidents that you just described of the violent agreement and all the other challenging things. And then there's 10,000 super positive and a lot of, middle of the road mediocre experiences. But on the difficult things, we can't cover all that. But as a general approach, tell me your thinking and reveal to us and the audience that are in the same situation. What were your secrets of doing so well for such a long period of time in that?
I think feeling like I was her business, like partner in the business was key. Like no matter what roles we were playing, or titles or whatever, I felt like we were in this together. I think that's where my passion to be an entrepreneur really comes in. Like, I got to fully experience that.
Mm.
And I think that's really important. I wasn't just playing this part. I mean, it was my business, even though I was, before I was even a 49-51 partner, I felt like that was the case.
So the second you said that, it became obvious. It was not obvious the second before. It's really a brilliant piece of advice. Like,
yes, I think
I could
that's
see
the
it being
deal.
a job. I could see all sorts of other feelings you might have about it. But I'm a partner. I've done all those things you taught me when I was young. I'm a partner. I'm an equal. Let's go.
Exactly. So I always felt that way. And it's interesting because my mom and I we always knew what our roles were. Like I was it's one of the funny stories is like probably the first 10 years I kind of led the sales department and she was doing operations. And we kind of knew that was our areas. Somehow or other, not out of like a conscious choice, I remember maybe in year 12 or something, at some point, I was like, wait a second, our roles have completely reversed. Now I'm operations and she's in sales. So it's like we didn't have it all figured out for sure. But I do think it's important to know, like, have your distinctive area, and like that's your wheelhouse, and one of the problems with being partners is, and not having like, I'm CEO and you're different levels of hierarchy is, being clear about what decisions what responsibilities are yours and what decisions are up to you. That's a challenge. fact, something I'm working on uh, still. What do you call it? Uncovering what that means, and I think it ripples down to the people that work here. And so it's like that's really important, and it could have been the case it didn't before. Like I would say that's something to work on. So you really know what your areas are, and it doesn't take a partnership agreement to make a decision.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, before leaving her and you all together, tell me on her side, because she did lead the business out in the beginning and was one of the partners. What do you think her top three strengths or actions really made this business get bigger and get to the point of success?
I mean, she's incredibly smart, and um, she's also very like good at setting up systems and stuff like that. Where, I still find it amazing that I remember as a kid, they were like I think they were the largest family-owned vending company in the country.
Mm.
They had video games and arcades and stuff like that in 26 states back in the 80s. And I remember as a little kid, she'd have these big ledger books, right? And I was like, oh, that looks horrible. But the fact that she was able to manage such an intricate business, you're talking about cash, uh, uh, electronics and parts, employees in 26 different states before she had a computer. Like that is incredible. I
From a
mean,
ledger, from a legal path.
so her being very smart. What else? Um, I think she's a caring person. Like she really um, instills in the value of these, the people that work with us and for us are real people. And just taught me a lot about like treating people with integrity and really making them feel like they're part of something, not just here collecting a paycheck, that kind of thing. It's super important.
I have noticed that she is relationship first.
Yeah,
If someone's not pulling off their assignment, she is development next. And as a last resort, compassionate finding of the next opportunity
yeah.
and remaining friends. Really a very unusual, impressive approach.
I'll give you one more on her. I think that's a huge strength. She's not a like a salesperson type of like we're both very operational. However, if you need a closer, he is really good at that. Not accepting no for an answer and not afraid to like go take big, bold risks to close, like with big accounts or um, I think about some of the craziest things that I heard about in the prior life, and I'm like, wow, that took some big, you know what?
Yeah. I can see that in her a little bit too. I'd love to have been in some of those meetings, but I wasn't.
Totally.
It's terrific. Okay, well, tell us about this transition, how it started, how the conversations went, any of the details, both financially and relationship wise, and discussions that would have been behind the scenes, and we just don't know that much about. You can't share them all, but what you can.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the transition was happening quite a while before. I was kind of acting as the CEO before it was even on our minds to make an official transition. My mom's the kind of person that is all like she's going to work, God willing, till till she can't do anything anymore. She wants to be involved, and so that was kind of going on, I would say, unconsciously. And I think it was about 3 years ago, she came to me and said, I really want to, I think it's important that we make a acknowledgement of this. Like, you're the CEO. She's still very active in the business. She's still my business partner. But it's clear that there was a role change and that there was a passing of the mantle. And I do think that was really important for a lot of reasons. And it doesn't mean, one of the lessons I've learned in the 3 years since then is that's just the start. It's taken a lot to get to a place where she's really good now in saying, And when I know it's actually transitions, she catches herself and giving her opinions and saying things like, if I were you, I might think about X, or you might consider, those kinds of terms. But it's it's in a good place now. And we also did it during we did this transition the year before, or the year of COVID. So you can only imagine when don't even know if you're going to have a business. It got put to the stress test real quick. And we had a lot of challenges with with inventory and our supply chain for a number of years that caused a lot of drain on our business. So it was
Planet, yeah, you
the
would too.
most challenging time to do this. Um,
Let
but
me
I think,
ask you. Let me go back a little bit. You said there's several things that make it important to do that. It sounded like you had at least a few, if not 10. But what are the reasons it's important to make it explicit, public, and clear? What do you think?
I mean, most importantly for her is like, okay, I've made it. I'm playing a different role now.
Hmm.
Okay. Probably for me, it was the least important, but it also was, I would say, no, I shouldn't diminish that. It is, one of my challenges, like I've always had my business partner happens to be my mom. And it was like, I felt like the, a lot of things that were really important, we needed to arrive at a joint decision on. And again, some of that's really good, but some of that's really detrimental, right? To be able to execute, I've got to be able to like trust myself, rely on myself. And it's not like I still don't consult with her where I think it's important, but like I'm much quicker at making decisions now, and understanding that this is my role to play, and I think that cascades down to my team as well.
Hmm.
So it's simpler in some ways. It was and less it's yeah, I would say simpler is probably the right word. Clearer, more direct accountability or ownership at at like I said, I think it's cascaded down too.
Yeah.
So that was big.
Yeah, it reminds me of a different dynamic in a different relationship in a marriage. If the parents have kids and they don't make it clear often, early, and frequently that we are not going to cross each other. Whatever one person says, the other one's going to support. So that gets rid of at some point most of the going back and forth trying to manipulate two people. And so by you two saying, look, he's this, I'm this, then people don't have to, it's not that they were trying to manipulate, but they don't have to be unclear, manipulate, whatever, all those unclear conversations kind of start to vanish, I think.
Yeah. I mean, so I think making a decision is like one of the most important things in business. So like
Yeah.
even if it's the wrong decision, well, the only way to learn that is by make a decision and do it to find out it was wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like being able to make faster, easier decisions slash implement them is been one of the really good effects of that.
Right. So it sounds like you had to formulate what it was going to be for sure. So you were both on the same, even if it was an obvious page, and then you had to make it public and kind of discuss it openly through
Mhm.
phases or all at once. And what else had to be taken care of as you were going through this transition?
Um, I mean, I talked about the challenge for me was like, okay, it used to be thing higher level decisions were a joint discussion. And so like that was part of my work was to be like, okay, I'm the CEO. It doesn't mean I mean, I'm still very respectful. And like I said, important decisions are consulted and agreed on as business partners. But understanding my part in it, which was, this part of me is nobody wants to fail. That's a common business owner like thing. And so it's easier for me to be unclear or not make it to be indecisive, because then I don't have to put myself out there. I'm not vulnerable.
Mm,
So I've had to learn a lot about myself being vulnerable and not me being the one who would go to my business partner to consult or be in agreement on
Mm,
things that really aren't necessary and
mm,
or helpful.
mm.
Um, and they don't slow, and it ultimately would slow us down.
Yeah.
Um, Also finding what the way in which my mom does make contributions, right? She wants to be very involved, honestly, I couldn't have a better person involved and or um, still being like helping me make those really important decisions. Actually, here's the thing that's really interesting now that she's out of a lot of the minutia of day-to-day management or regular management is she's really helpful now on being she's outside the forest. So she can see blind spots that I have, like, hey, you're making this too hard, or um, I don't know. She just offers a lot more valuable insights because it's a she's outside the forest and it's just that clarity of it's up to me to decide, but um, that's been a big gift in this as well.
She didn't have urgencies of daily menial tasks putting pressure on her directly so that she
Mhm.
might be able to prioritize meaningful importance rather than urgency and proximity, and she
Yes.
could see those things and
And she's been
suggest.
able to focus on a couple really key project things that were ideal
Oh,
for her skill set. And also it's not about like management of teams and stuff like that. It was like a one particular project that she was able to really focus on, and it took her over a year to get it across the finish line. Um, and it's helped us grow our GP by um, I would say 5 to 6 full percentage points
wow.
this
Yeah, that's
year.
worthwhile. That's
Yeah.
interesting. So you, with their extra time, so to speak, when you took the reins, you could point her at projects of
Mhm.
someone who has a whole minutia ability, but also the grand picture ability too.
Totally.
Yeah, really interesting. Okay. Well, let's go on to you. You know, you gain this, and instead of jumping right to there and saying, you know, what next? Because I want to talk about that at length. I want to ask you a different question. As you look back on your work life, you know, may have started when you're 10 mowing the lawn. I don't know when it started. It sounded like it was dang early. But along the way, in personal life and professional life, everyone hits something very, very difficult, and it can be 100 different flavors and sources. Did you ever feel like you had such an inciting incident where it really challenged you and you had to dig out or find a new way to pivot?
Yeah, I feel like there's been many. I'm trying to think of a good example. Um, I mean, there's stuff about me as a adolescent and growing up that there were really key pieces. And then there's business challenges. Are you wanting to more reflect on the business challenge aspect of it?
Yeah, that's interesting. What were the biggest? What's the biggest bit? One of the biggest business challenges or work related challenge?
Um, well, we had the 2008 crash, was one. Um, COVID was another one that comes very top of mind.
Yeah.
Um,
What the
and
2008, was it just a general recession challenge, or did you have a particular relationship with what was going on that made it hard?
what 2008, what is it? The Chinese proverb of a good crisis is a best opportunity. I really did experience that in 2008, which helped a lot during COVID because I was like, you know what, I remembered that. I'm like, first of all, the world's not going to come to an end. And there was things that I could do that I had to do. I was forced to do
Hmm.
that made us a better business in both cases. I remember in 2008, um, I remember saying, you know what, I can't stand this listening to the news and the world coming to an end. I'm shutting that off. And we actually ended up growing our sales that year.
Wow,
Um, uh,
nice.
and we made really key decisions on um, um, things that we had been afraid to do before. And we're like, you know what, we have to do this now. I have to say, like most of my best moments of brilliance, there has been something really at force. Like I like to say, like you look at our best processes now. If I really broke most of those down, I would say there was most of them had some big catastrophe that happened, and now that's why we have this process.
We're fixing this.
Exactly.
This constraint, this bottleneck, this missing of tracks to the next set of tracks.
Exactly. And that's evolved over time. It used to be that it was much more being pushed in to do things, and now we're doing things not as much because they're being pushed.
Yeah.
So that's for sure true.
You weren't super old in 2008, so 12 years later, your business memory had learned things for pandemic, and what did you carry forward more than a decade that helped you in pandemic?
Knowing that the world wasn't coming to an end,
Mm-hmm.
that we would survive, and there would be opportunities in this that I didn't know what they were.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these were going to be like it's like some of our best opportunities occur during this.
Wow.
And I knew it was completely different. It made actually 2008 look like nothing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I just remember having learned those lessons, like to not be afraid of it,
Yeah.
even
Wow.
though I was afraid of it.
What were some of the good moves you made in pandemic that helped you?
Well, I mean, we were able to make some personnel changes that we had really avoided. People that had been here too long or really weren't adding value. And it's difficult. We care a lot about our people, and um, you know, there was a lot of opportunities to change those things to make critical role changes for people. Like, hey, what really wasn't working for something, um, and like being able to say like now's the time to make that change, and taking very difficult transitions were there. What else? I mean, um, I think it elevated our team a lot. Like I really had to say, hey, we've got our CFO, who's a longtime trusted person. We're like, I need help. We need this part of our business. Had nothing to do with accounting, but he's good at that kind of work. And so I was like, I need you to be in charge of this now. And he stepped up. So like it really just takes away excuses of why things can't be done
Yeah.
and find a way to get them done.
That's so interesting. Like, something really difficult happens in the market, in the world, whatever. And it does. I can feel what you're saying. I've been there. Like, you do have an easier time going to a CFO and saying, hey, I know that you're busy getting ready to report and all these things, but we really need you over here because it's an unusual time. And it just makes that silo break down and obvious that people should cross-functionally cooperate and such.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good. All right. So I want to go to the time where here we go. It's your era. It's time for you to either do exactly the same or chart a 2% different degree chart path, or go wildly crazy. What were you thinking, and what was that like?
It wasn't like there was some radical shift. In fact, it was like not it reminded me of getting married. I was so worried about it, and spent all this time with how are we going to handle this and prenuptial stuff and worst case scenarios, and like nothing changed. We're still the same
It was
people.
Y2K kind of.
Exactly like Y2K. So on one level, I've talked about how important it was, and marriage is obviously important as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like there's oh my gosh, now it's totally different. Um, so it was an evolving thing. I mean, I knew things were different, and it was going to be, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Um, I think that did lead to. I also think I think about about, was it 2 years ago? I was approaching 50.
Mhm.
Well, just turned 50, so I'm I was in my late 40s and I'm like, I don't want to, I want to really, there's a part of me that talked about it a little bit already about the vulnerability and playing small. And I'm
Yeah.
like, one of the, um, like, I don't want to, I've got, I want to be able to, and I got, let's say 10 years, right? It's all of a sudden, it's like, I don't have the rest of my life. And I'm like, I really want to go for something bigger and better that's different. And, um, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how to do it if I did know what it was, but I just knew that like I feel like there's a lot of areas where we're being indecisive, we're playing small, and I just want to do better than that. And even if I don't hit it, like I think back, what would my regret be? My only regret would be I wish I would have tried. I'm very good about not living in the past,
Yeah.
even with my biggest blunders and errors, and that's part like converting those into opportunities is part of how I do it. But even my worst moments or things, I don't really go into the past. I do spend a lot of time in the future thinking about how are we going to do it or what could happen? How could this go wrong? But I'm like, I want to do something different.
Yeah.
And that kind of, if it's okay, I'd like to, our timing was fortuitous because I joined Vistage and Vistage has great speakers, of which you were one of them. And
Thanks.
I remember you talking about the clarity and getting like coming up with a vision and not like the vision in a book, like really where do you want to go?
Yeah.
And then how are you going to get there with your mission? And that really spoke to me at the time. And I, we then spoke afterwards and we started working one-on-one and developed, I think we knew right away what the mission was going to be in terms of um, the thing that's going to propel us.
Yeah.
And it's continued to evolve now for, I think it's been, we're coming up on a little bit over a year, I would say,
Yeah.
since we first met and starting to really figure out what that is and execute it, get the team on board. And it's just continued to grow since then.
Yeah. Well, before picking apart your version of all that, which is I'm excited to do today because I really like your version, um, I think you said something that's really subtle, that's really valuable there. Where at the beginning of that dialogue just there, you didn't think you were finished yet. It's not like hey, I've got 10 to 15 years. And so that's the last verse. That's too much time to try to mentally acknowledge. And people talk about 10-year goals, but it's been shown that it's very difficult for humans to predict 10 years out with clarity at all. It's great to pick a direction, but it would kind of operate more of a 5-year vision of a reality anyway. And I love what you said there. I can picture in my mind my youth of the whole world's my oyster, and then I can kind of picture because I'm a little bit older now, but I'm close enough, not close enough, not in it, but I'm close enough to an age where someone might think about retiring in 10 years. I'm close enough to think, yeah, at that time I would feel like I'm going to end big. I'm going to finish strong. I'm going to have the home stretch be my fastest stretch. And I can feel that. The one you talked about is in the middle where we are, middle age. And it made me, as soon as you said it, I thought midlife crisis versus what you've done, which is, people get a lot of dopaminergic reaction, dopamine on pursuing something that's meaningful, that's
Mhm.
within imagination reach, and you kind of done that. Like, okay, I'm in the middle now, and I want to go do something big to help this particular market that I'm in, and so let's make a plan and let's create the steps and the scope and the cooperation and let's go pursue that destination. That's a really interesting middle life insight, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just I don't have like not only is the world my oyster, but I have the rest of my life, right? Like,
Yeah.
compounding of money and investing. It's like, oh, it's 40 years of it, you know what I mean? And I also think it's like as I've gotten a clarity about this part that there was unclarity, right? I've talked about this over and over again, like where I'm like, yeah, there's unclarity about where we're headed, what kind of business we are, what we're doing on the planet, like how we're going to do it. And I'm like, I need to figure that out, like for crying out loud. I'm going
Yeah.
to put a stake in the ground on something or things and go for it.
Let me ask you, without, I don't want to spell out everything we did together. You have some proprietary thoughts I don't want to expose, and I don't want to make promotional for me. But one way to ask about just the most basic thing, like people talk about in great selling books and in the financial sector, how purpose is either let's make the stockholders a bunch of money or let's save the world, is the 200 people that I work with. And even if you're 10,000 employees strong, you don't have enough resources to save the world. You organize, you go on Zooms, you have meetings in order to help a specific market, part of the economy, part of the world that you can affect, and that's your purpose. And we met with you and I met alone several times, and you had some terrific thoughts, and we were very excited about them. But an interesting thing happened when we met with your larger team. They contributed thoughts that you had maybe already in your head but hadn't thought of over a few weeks, and I hadn't thought of. And that big soup of purpose, what you really do today, tomorrow, forever, whenever, what you guys are gathered to do, what's your particular favorite benefit that you bring businesses and people? Like, which one really speaks to you personally, Michael?
Well, I think that one's pretty easy because it's the through line for me being an entrepreneur, me being involved in my community, whatever it is. It's also with our clients. And it's like, I love being what motivates me, what gets me out of bed is I love being part of helping other people grow.
Mm,
Like when I have a particular a great story of a sales rep who was starting when I first started in the business, and she was an assistant, didn't know anything. I mean, because she must have been 19 or something. And I remember when she did her first $1,000 order, it was a big deal. And I said, it's all in your mind, like it's all relative. What you're comfortable doing is what you'll do. I
yeah.
said one day that $1,000 order, you'll be quoting and doing $10,000 orders.
Hmm.
And then you know how it works. Like, so you go from 10,000 to then 50 or 100. And sure enough, was exactly the path that she followed. So seeing other people succeed and knowing I played a small part in it is what motivates me. Like, my team growing, helping our clients succeed is also part of what it is.
And
And I think
that's
even about our
central to
vendor,
purpose. Yeah.
like some of my favorite stories are about like I've worked with a vendor. I'm like, man, you guys really should try this. And I've got one in particular. We still talk about it every time I see each other. He's like, you convinced me to give this a shot. And I remember the first time I saw him afterwards, he high-fived me and it's like, it really worked. And now it's like I've got a whole thing about that. Like we're doing this as our company's doing it. And the idea that seed I had something to do with it is really cool to me.
Yeah, now you know why I like what I do. So tell me, you said something about a customer. Tell me an example if you have a specific story about, because that's really purpose oriented. Like did you use this method of whatever it is? Tell me what it is and the example with the customer.
Well, I mean, the really cool thing about branded merchandise is it's really a personal thing, right? I mean, yeah, you can get a pen or whatever. Those aren't the best examples. Although there's some cool ones where it's like not just a
Some
pen, right?
$6,000 pens. I know a guy who
Yeah.
sells them. Yeah.
But I think a lot about like apparel and workwear and stuff like that, which is, people are wearing it. It's a personal, nothing more personal than that. Um, and so I'll tell, we have a great success story where there's a big factory and they're used to using rental uniforms. Everybody hates them. right? They don't want to wear them. The administration's a pain. It's expensive. It's just,
They're
ugh.
thick, dull, they hurt. Yeah.
Right. And we set up a solution for them where their employees are able to go online and self-administer and basically pick out the kind of stuff that they want to wear at the factory. I mean, it was curated by the departments and stuff like that, but it made people feel like, oh, it's special. I get to go shop and pick out stuff that I like.
And
And
express me.
exactly. And we got just the nicest what do you know what we'll call it? Note from the plant administrator saying, because this is really the power of what we can do, that not only was the experience and everybody loved it, true, but more importantly, their employee morale boosted, their productivity boosted at their factory, and like missed days went down. I mean, I'm sure not all of it has to do with our stuff, right? But it was a big deal. Like it was changed the whole dynamic of their factory. I mean, to me, like that is so cool to have
Yeah.
that kind of effect on it's a huge operation that's got like 2,000 people doing major stuff.
2,000 individuals that feel like I get to express me. That's so cool. Yeah.
I mean, if I could figure out a way to bottle that story and market it, that would be ideal.
Yeah. It will be. It will be.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So I've been impressed with your ability, and that's why I asked you to do this, is that you've been able, at least with your team and someone alone, and even with your mom occasionally, she's been a little lighter, but she's been super terrific. You've been able to see the future. And you saw that, hey, we deal with a lot of marketing managers or HR managers, and we do some pens, like you said, and things like that. But I see a different customer in a different role in the future. Tell me a little bit what you see 5 years out. Like what do you see that's different in the person you serve?
I think that I'm a big fan of hybrid remote work capabilities. Like I don't, we were doing hybrid before everybody was doing it in the pandemic. Because I believe in treating people the way you want to be treated, and people have responsibilities. They get their job done. I don't want to micromanage them. If there's a need to be together, I'm all about it. But all that being said, the more distance there is more of a need for connection. Like we have a 1 day a week. I hate to even call it a policy because it's not a policy. It's a want. Like Wednesdays we call it our connection day, and I make it very clear this day is not about being more productive, okay? Because everybody's here in the office and it's loud, and the other 4 days this is like the best we work you could find, because you could have 10 people in here like very productive, no distraction.
Ongoing, yep.
And where was I going with that? I was going somewhere.
Where do you see the customer going?
Yes. Oh, so I was going to say, the more there is the ability to do things with technology and remote and AI and whatever this is, there's going to be even more need for this connection stuff, the real, so those types of pieces, things that we do that make people feel like they're unique individuals, an onboarding kit, a rewards program for people's years of service or accomplishments, like things that are tangible, in person, not digital, not remote, like physical.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be more and more important the more distant we are.
Yeah. So that's the setting too. So people that are on digital but need some proximity with people and team incentives and items and promotions, and I know you do work with retail too. I think you could speak to that. So as you look into workwear, into retail, where you're helping people marketing, you could just go for generic what we see every day. But what do you see in the future down the road, 5 years? What are some of the things you could be doing there?
And when we're talking about retail, like where you need people to come,
Restaurants and things like that.
oh my gosh, that's even with people's ability to go on Amazon and just get whatever they want, or never, and DoorDash and not have to leave, like businesses really need to think about ways not to, and I believe it needs to be done in a really thoughtful way, not just like, oh, you come here and you're going to get $100 off your meal or something. Like, you want to make people feel valuable, special, or there's a connection that's really unique. I could share some recent examples where, like, we work for.
Yeah, I do. I'd love to hear
Yeah,
those.
no, we have customers in the retail mall business, and their biggest um, um, they create this like event that's in all the centers, and at the centerpiece of each one is people that come on that day get a free tote bag. Okay. Now, it's not that the tote bag's that special. I mean, it is cool, and they do enough volume that we're able to do this really cool custom thing overseas and ship it in 6 months in advance and all this stuff. But it's the way they organize it, and they make it's the whole event that leads up to it. And yes, there's a tote bag, but it's that they make people feel really special and like they're part of something.
Yeah.
That they have this really unique item that they've gotten. It's not just some bag, even a cool bag. It's like there's a special design to it, and that kind of stuff is like you're trying to get people to actually show up at a mall.
Hard task these days, and so you're looking out ahead and you're thinking we've got to get, because that's going to be missed, and it maybe even turn out to be fairly rare, but we have to make the ones that attempt it to get us humans back together really effective at doing it. And there's really impressive thinking around that. Tell me shorter term, like as you look out a year or two, you've tried to say, okay, we're going in a slightly new direction, at least a new flavor of the direction, and we've got to accomplish some serious things. You approach missions not just as a synonym of your purpose, but you have tell us about your fairly practical, powerful, concrete things you're trying to accomplish in the next year altogether.
Well, I will describe it as like breaking through and making a decision that sets it apart, and the ability to focus on it. Because especially in my industry, where I can literally sell anything to anybody. It's actually, I want to back up one quick second and talk about a strategy that my mom and I had that was hugely successful.
Yeah.
For the first, I would say, felt like 15 years, I would say easily, in business, we had basically 3 clients. We had PepsiCo, that's a big one. We had Corona, is another big one. And then we actually had an industry, which is the blood industry, that we've made a niche in. And the only connection between the 3 of those is they're all liquids. But we made a conscious choice to say no to any other new types of customers. I remember people would try to refer me, and I'd say, I really appreciate it, but I would send them to a friend who's in a competitor. But I would say yes to anything that Pepsi asked me for, because there was a scalability to it. So that gave us a focus point that we're going to get good at this. We're going to get good at and that's how we made enough advancements to be able to open it up to other accounts now that we do. So I think the same thing is the way I'm approaching our mission really over the next couple of years. I mean, we're halfway into year 1 of it. As we made a conscious choice to pick one of our strongest program solutions and say, we're going to make this one really scalable. To be able to actually have like we do a lot of things for a lot of people, but we have a great stuff, but we've got it to 95%. Well, it's that extra 5 or 10% that really enables us to scale it and to be good at it and create something that we can be experts at, not just that thing, but it helps us. It's a way to drive new business through this. So we have a lot of things that are like, we do really good, but making it great is another story.
Yeah, for sure.
Simultaneously, the beauty of this way I'm approaching it is, I thought, and this is turning out to be true, one of the reasons it's so hard to make changes or fix things or solve problems, really systemic issues that we need to fix, is because you think about all the little levels of detail and then multiply that times all the variations of it.
Yeah.
But by kind of putting the blinders on and saying, you know what, we're going to pick this one lane, and in the process of setting this up all the way from selling it to the product itself to how we actually operationalize it, is going to help us fix these real issues that we have. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have a really good project management system before, and we just got done building, and I'm like, I can't believe that, because I think we're good at process. And Lord knows we have 27
Got a lot of
processes
process. Yeah.
layered deep, but we were missing the most important process, which was the top line. Like, how do you go from this to this to this that brings it all together?
Yeah.
Um, and that's also a good lesson. I repeatedly learn and remind myself that most of the best things that I've done require some level of thinking, man, I'm such an idiot that I didn't know that. How come it took me 25 years? We've been doing these kinds of solutions for clients, and I'm just figuring this out.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
the best. I want those.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I've learned from you guys that I really think people should really pay attention to is that, yes, I said, why don't we have a different kind of mission? Why don't we have one that you actually accomplish with verifiables as part of my method that we found through research? The best do that. The mediocre people treat it like just a synonym of purpose, because it doesn't prevent you to say, you mentioned one of your core values in your purpose, which is you said we really want to bring people proximate again, and we're going to actually accomplish that in new ways, unforeseen ways in 5 years. But we do it all the time, and we bring people to the patios of burger joints, and we do, you do all sorts of things to bring people proximate. But you said, we're going to create a new line. And, obviously you and I are not saying it because it's it's a really great strategic advantage you have. But you have a specific line that you've launched into, and you said, by the second year, we're going to have 5-star ratings on that product. And that sounds like a product launch, not a mission, but clearly you're on a mission to create a product. But the brilliance of it is that you said, well, if you come the other way, if you say, let's just look internally and say, we want to create a better process at X, Y, and Z, well, you have no example. Like you're just trying to imagine how to make it better at each step and how to quantify it at each step. And that's all very useful, but I've watched it be so much more relevant for you to have a real big time company example in the real life of customers in the space of the market and say, oh, we have to do step 1. Okay, take that step of a process. We have to make that as excellent everywhere and do those 2 things, step 1 of this. Okay, step 2 is taking it everywhere. Really great. At the end of year 2, you're going to have a better general scalable process for those key things. Really, really smart, I think. But with the time we have finished, I want to explore this thing a little more where you said, I'm really good at helping people over 90 days. Tell us the general philosophy that's the foundation. And then tell us the actionables. Like, what you've done it in your own life. You've helped salespeople with it. You've done this. You have a thing, a method. Tell us a little bit about the philosophy and the method and the actions and such.
Well, I believe that, breaking something down into, I'm going to make a full-on commitment, I'm going to do whatever it takes, is impossible for anything longer than 90 days. And it becomes really possible when you say, hey, I'm not asking you to do this the rest of your life, but can you commit to it for 90 days? I'm not 91, it just really puts the blinders on, and it enables people to say yes, or enables me to make a commitment to something. I could take the best possible thing that you can imagine. If I think about how I'm going to do it for the rest of my life, it gets impossible. And so there's something magical about this 90 days and being solely driven on something for 90 days, like not solve the world's problems in 90 days, but I'm going to pick this one thing, and or 1 or 2 things, and I'm going to commit to it. I think one of my other strengths is I feel like I'm able to really connect with people and understand them. Like, what each person, everybody's different, right? And so when I work one-on-one with somebody, I like to really figure out what makes them tick. And, there's some people are trying to, and just meet them where they're at and come up with and it really should be, in a perfect world, it's their idea and their want. I mean, it can be tricky at times, but want. They're thinking, man, this is my path, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I can do, and I'm supporting them in it. And really crafting those commitments, if you would, in ways that that work for them, that set them up for success. I'm a big believer in, I'd rather do less and get it accomplished, and then you start to set up success. But each person's different, so you take the time to I got some people that are like, they want to tackle the world in 90 days. And so for them, I'm like, you really my work is to get them to pull it back. What's going to be the one that is going to make the biggest impact, or what's the one you don't want to do? That's kind of starts the conversation. You have other people that are more timid and they don't think they can do something. So you're like, you're really getting them to step up in a bigger way. And there's everybody in between. And that's just one example of it.
So you're saying, okay, look, 90 days is a time you can deal with. It might be a person, it might be a couple of people in a small team, or even a team. They have these objectives, and you're saying, let's make a difference, create better outcomes for clients or business or your job in 90 days. Now, I'm going to work with each of you, even if it's informal, meeting them in the hall, asking about the work. I need to understand them. What makes them tick? What are their wants out of work and life? And trying to integrate those, and then adjust for their attitude or their perspective of like, I can solve world peace in 90 days, or I can only make 2 phone calls in 90 days. You're trying to get them in the middle, maybe step 3, and then you weave that into encouragement over the weeks, checking with them weekly to get to a 90-day difference made. Is that close?
That's a pretty good way to describe it. It made me think of one thing else about the 90-day thing is like, if knowing that, and we like to space it out. So we do 3 90-day periods, and because there's a wrap up from the first one, and then there's really thinking through what am I going to do next.
So not quarters, but spaced 90 days for personal and team development. Interesting.
And that day 1 decision point, right, is again back to the thing about making a decision, right? In some respects, it could be anything. It doesn't even matter what the decision is. The fact that you decided this is what we're going to do, and you committed to it, and then you stuck with it for 90 days. There's a lot of power in that. So like the whole point of forcing ourselves to get out of our comfort zones and make a commitment to something. The accounting department's going to do X. There's 100 things we want to do. Probably are trying to do them all at some level, but we're going to pick this one thing to really put ourselves out there on.
Yeah.
And the other thing to it too, I think is important is honor the commitment, honor the work that's happening, I often, more times than not, I think I can accomplish everything in just 90 days. I had no idea what was involved in it until I stripped back the curtain. I made the commitment. I started doing it. Right. So don't honor the work that's happening, the progress that's being made with specific goals in mind. Right. But if you don't, it's not the be all end all if you hit that goal.
Yeah. Well, you didn't just say this, but it relates. It's a sibling of what you just said on part of that, which is you said, honor and respect what you've done in the past. I don't know why my brain just went there, but it went to, if you take something on that you're new at, and someone in your organization has already been working on it before, so many times I've seen one leader or one employee kind of discredit the past so that they can have their chance at making a difference. And I find it so uncomfortable. And I've talked to those people, and it's demeaning to the person in the past. They've worked on this for 5 years, and someone new comes along and says, that was really terrible, so we're going to do better. That's really hard to hear, and however soft you present it. And I've seen other examples where someone takes something on new and they look in the past and they say, boy, Jeff did a terrific job at this. I can't believe, I don't know how we're going to improve each quarter like he did, but here's our next step and this is what we're doing. And it's so much better received, and they get the cooperation from the old team and the side teams. And
Totally. Even if it's we're going to completely go a new way, we would only be able to take this on had Jeff not gotten us to this point. So you always honor the work that's come before you, even if it was messed up.
Yeah, because they tried.
Exactly.
They tried. Well, is there anything that we haven't said that you would like to say? We've got a couple more minutes we can spend. What if you think about work life and your leadership? What do you want to make sure you say to the world?
I mean, just I'm aware of there being multiple through lines here, which is, trust yourself. And don't play small, go for it. There's nothing wrong with, I've said it already, my biggest improvements came from my biggest failures. So what do you have to worry about? If it fails spectacularly, it's going to be still a win. So what do you have to worry about? So I would say go for it and, be decisive and then, break it down into manageable components. I don't know. I think that when I was in public accounting for my 3 years, every Sunday night, I didn't realize this till I made the switch back to working in the family business, which was not glorious at the time. And we were very tiny.
Right.
I had this big job and I was wore suits and went into all these fancy businesses and as an auditor. And every Sunday night I was like, God, I don't want to go to work next week. I'm dreading it. And I could count on, in the 3 years I did that, on one hand, how many times I was not dreading it. In the 30 years since going from that to entrepreneurship again, despite COVID, and you name the problem, we've had it.
Yeah.
I think there's been, maybe I can count on one hand how many Sunday nights I've been like, I don't want to go to work next week.
Yeah.
In 30 years. So really, entrepreneurship for me is the only, it's in my DNA. So, I think it's not for everybody, but if you're an entrepreneur, it's almost like you don't have a choice. So you already know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's been it's been gratifying, and it's not because of some achievement or something like that. It's because I've got to be passionate about what I want to do and get to make the kind of life and life balance that I want to create. So I really don't have any regrets, and I'm just nothing but grateful.
Yeah. Terrific advice. I think it even fits in corporate America, where I would say at this point in my career, after all, I've experienced the exact same thing that you said in a job. It just doesn't seem like it's possible, but that's pretense. That's pretense. It's just possible to try to do something big and great that's not been done and unusual and involves new people, but somehow those silos, those bosses make us think it's not worth the attempt. Do what Michael said, even in a job.
No, I think you're right. You might have to find the right person to talk to, because it may be the management level doesn't want you helping, but they've got a boss. Somebody at that company really is entrepreneurial and wants to grow.
Yeah.
Right? So they want what you have if you're really bringing the passion, energy, and the commitment to it. So you just got to find those lanes.
Yeah.
I would think.
Michael Goldberg, OmniSource Marketing. Thanks so much.
Been a pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments. Share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com. Click the Let's Talk button without obligation and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.